Oh, great. Thank you. All right. So
Just a question. What's this thing that says practice mode only? Attendees cannot join until you broadcast.
We have to hit broadcast.
I have to hit that? Okay, thank you.
okay. Are you hitting it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is a regular monthly meeting of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission being held electronically via Zoom on August 17th, 2020 at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place and agenda of this meeting has been noticed by transmitting a copy to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, the Times, Trentonian, and by filing a copy with the clerk of Princeton. It's been posted to the municipal website, www.princetonnj.gov/meetings. Pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding COVID-19 coronavirus, notice that during the declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission will be held electronically via Zoom and transmitted to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, Times, and filed with the clerk of Princeton. Such notices have been placed on the official bulletin board at the municipal complex on the Princeton website, and they are to be maintained throughout the year. Okay, so Daniel, do you want to do the roll?
Julie Capizoli,
I'm here.
Shirley Satterfield,
Present.
Elric Endersby,
Me too.
Roger Shatskin,
Here.
Brenna Campbell,
Here.
Julia Tadzlar,
Here.
Robert Bumpensworth.
Here.
Okay, I think that's everybody on right now. Let's see, so we have, well, Elizabeth, did you have any announcements?
No, not today.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's move ahead with the minutes. They're from February 24th. And I think Tom had given some changes. So I don't know if anyone else has any changes.
I just have a question. I saw that was anybody able to fill in the last name of the engineer from the first applicant from the it's given us Mark Blank.
Oh, on page 3.
Communications.
Right, that's mentioned a couple times, yeah.
I just thought maybe somebody could have emailed over to them and gotten that last name.
Okay, we'll reach out to them.
All right, and then I left the meeting early, so I don't think I can vote on the minutes.
I wasn't here.
Okay. So it's just, who was it again? It was Celia, Robert,
Roger,
Roger.
and that's it. So the,
Okay.
No, I had one little change
Okay.
on page 6. 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down that I stated that it was not very happy but comfortable with the idea of murals because there's more than one involved.
Oh, right.
okay.
Okay.
For
The
this,
change-
no, wait a minute, for this site. Was that to be added?
you're-
Because I was not doing this in general for all sites, but for this site.
Okay.
We'll add that to the end.
And I again had the question about what Mark's last name was. That obvious, hopefully that can be supplied by the applicant, should be.
Tom has joined us.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Tom.
Hello.
Tom,
So we're just voting on the February minutes. And I know you sent in changes to Daniel.
Yeah, they were just pretty minor.
Okay. All right, so we'll incorporate those changes. Like I said, I'm not allowed to vote because I left early. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
I move approval of the minutes of February 24th.
I second that with the changes made and following up and getting the missing information.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So thank you for approving the minutes. Okay, our resolution has to do with the next application. Ed, should we wait to approve the resolution until after the application?
Well, the resolution may become moot, but it does reflect what you did at the last meeting. So I would go ahead and consider and adopt the resolution.
Okay, all right. Does anyone have changes to the resolution for 86 Stockton Street? Is there a motion to approve?
I move the approval of the resolution.
All right, and a second?
And
Okay, thanks, Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, thank you. Thanks for doing that business. Now we will go on to 86 Stockton Street again. So Elizabeth or Daniel, do you want to let the applicants in?
Sure.
Let's see where they are.
Oh, okay.
Julie, I'm noticing that an attendee labeled 31 Green Street has their hand up. I don't know if that requires attention or.
So they have a chat and she's saying that I want to get on the call. I can see and hear you all. Why is the chat disabled?
Oh,
So I'm answering her. I see
okay, thanks.
you.
Thank you. So are the,
Sure. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I'm not sure if my husband's joining. He was on a call, so I'm not sure if he's able to join. But I don't know. On it, yeah.
Jessica, is the testimony you're about to give on this new roof the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thanks.
all right.
All yours.
Well,
I just mentioned to Elizabeth in all of our excitement about discussing the solar roof, we didn't discuss the second issue that was brought up in the application, which is if the Tesla roof for some reason doesn't get approved, what is the alternate roofing material that we can use for 86 Stockton? We had proposed standing seam or the architectural asphalt shingle. Our preference, but we never really resolved it. I think everyone was tired after the meeting and we sort of moved on. And I you all taking the moment to just sort of put us first on the schedule to just discuss this and understand, if not, but then what?
right. So I think we should just take it in order then. The first preference is standing seam metal, and the second preference is asphalt shingle. So
There's preference for both in the neighborhood. In other words, most of the other Stedman properties actually that I referenced, which are that are most of those, if but our neighbors all have architectural shingles. So we leave it sort of as, you know, as a question.
Right. So would members like to comment on what would be preferable? And to clarify, there's you're running into problems with the solar panels and you're interested in going back to a conventional roof.
So Tesla is, so there's two things. We're still pending administrative approval, yet roof is frankly leaking. So we are up against some time limits, especially with hurricane of August. And so where we would love to use Tesla, if Tesla tells us they can't produce for 3 months, we have to decide on whether we wait and we throw a tarp on the roof, or we, you know, we're into some pretty tough times here in September, potentially, with hurricanes. And so, and we're doing other work outside of the house. So we just want the information, right? To be able to decide and make, if it comes down to it and we have to proceed. So that's our you know, we'd like to have the alternative.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Robert?
Yeah, basically, one of the reasons why I could approve the Tesla, aside from the fact I thought it was an interesting proposal, was that it isn't terribly visible, really, I think, from the street. And I think also that as far as whether it's asphalt or standing seam, the same would apply. It's not particularly visible. But on the other hand, I do think that the asphalt is, I mean, standing seam probably was not used when the house was built. Most likely, I think it was probably wooden.
I think it was
shingles of sort. Yeah, and most of the other properties have the so-called architectural asphalt, and that would be my preference, but I really couldn't oppose standing seam either. But I think if Tesla is still a possibility, I thought maybe it was no longer a possibility.
Well,
that would be
right.
That would be my preference.
The concern when the roof started really leaking was, well, if not Tesla, then what? Back 3 months, we have to really make a decision.
I think it could be either one, really. My preference would be for the asphalt, but it could be either one. Standing seam or asphalt.
Now, Ulrich, I know you weren't crazy about the Tesla. Did you have a preference?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I felt like I was so negative the last time. Personally, I'm very positive about standing seam. Although I too could go with either one. I will say, if you put on a standing seam roof, you'll never have to do it again. And the reason why several of you spoke up to the fact that the Tesla roof was particularly applicable to this project is that the roof pitch is quite shallow, and then there again the standing seam is I think a good choice. But I would go with either one, and I would suggest that as a commission, unless any of us have anything strongly against those two, we should vote in favor of either possibility, so you don't have to come back and see us again.
I have a question about, was the standing seam, the product, was it detailed, and the exact standing seam that was going to be used, was that in the previous application? Because there are many types of standing seam metal roofs, and I don't really feel comfortable just giving a blanket approval to that. I would prefer to say, yeah, if the Tesla doesn't work out, go with the standing seam, but I think you're going to have to come back with the details of, what the material is, what the color is, what the standing seam is. It a prefab standing seam, or is it something that's, fabricated in place? It will be somewhat visible, and especially from Edge Hill Street. So I don't think we can just completely give a blanket approval without seeing exactly what's being proposed. So that would be my one concern.
I don't think we could give blanket approval either. I think previously there was some things that had to be approved administratively, including the sides of the dormer and various other details. Similar details would have to be provided for whatever system is used, and perhaps they could be done administratively.
That's what I'm thinking.
So for your comment on that, personally for the standing Grover Metal Works, and they have done several homes in the area. Very familiar. Propose a 24 gauge standing seam for projects. Well, but I'm happy to provide more info as needed.
When the time comes, I think that would be the right thing to do. And Elizabeth can, give you the guidance on exactly what would be needed.
Yeah,
I could
David?
not hear the applicant's last statements.
I'm sorry. Company that we use for the standing seam is Grover Metal Works, and they have several homes in the area as well as in Trenton. They propose using Galvalume, which is sort of the brand, the actual standing seam. But he's done several other projects in the Princeton area.
Okay, I just couldn't hear it before.
Yep.
All right. Well, then, Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I think as we talked about when we were talking about the solar roof, the details on the built-in gutters on the front of the house really aren't suitable, I don't believe, for Galvalume. So there's going to have to be some additional work done, possibly in a different metal. But at any rate, I think like last time, what we asked for was some details before the work was fully approved by the administrative end, and I think that's what we should ask for again.
Okay.
Well, here's a question. If they were to go with the architectural asphalt shingle, would they still need administrative, or is everyone comfortable enough with
They'll
that?
need administrative approval for the details. The details aren't shown.
Right, so we haven't seen the flashing, and, all right, I get your point. So then is the consensus that whatever it is, there still needs to be administrative approval?
Yes.
So is there a motion for that?
Julie, I just wanted to point out there's a hand raised intent. I don't know when you're going to take public comment, but.
Oh, sure. They wanted to comment on this application?
Their hand is up now, I assume.
Okay, so yeah,
And
sure.
we'll- Two hands up now.
All right. So can either Elizabeth or Daniel let them in so they can ask a question?
Sure. So Yana Moore, I'm going to have her come in.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi,
Yana.
Yana.
Unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Hey, Yaina, did you have a question for 86 Stockton Street?
Yes, I did, because I have been working with Tesla for a couple of years trying to get solar panels, and am interested in moving to the solar roof product as well in my historic neighborhood, Witherspoon Jackson. And I just wanted to be supportive of the applicant, who, if they're desiring to take advantage of the environmental and other benefits of solar energy, that the Historic Preservation Commission should do everything that they can to facilitate that kind of pursuit for applicants from the historic districts. It's very rare and a unique product in terms of the solar roof tiles that has become available. It tends to be more costly, but then there's been some price reduction over the years when it has finally come ostensibly to market in New Jersey. Tesla's notoriously delayed in installation, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for the applicant, and hoping that they don't have to go to those alternatives. But if you need a roof, you know that's the problem. It's the problem before the solar comes in. But anyway, I did want to be supportive because we're certainly are hoping that for reasons that have a lot to do with economics, that other residents in the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood can also take advantage of solar energy, whether by roof tiles or by solar panels, can benefit with the support of the HPC in understanding that the future is upon us and there are needs to address both global warming, economic issues, as well as an attempt to maintain some historic balance in terms of the physical appearance of historic neighborhoods.
Thank
And one
you.
last thing.
Sure.
Are you going to disable the chat?
That is typically disabled in the webinar format that we use for the land use hearings.
But so what you're saying, it's not going to be disabled in this?
No, the Historic Preservation Commission is a land use board, so it is disabled for, I think it can be used by members of the panel, but not by members of the public. That's our typical policy for the chat.
The public was writing today, so I was able to respond to someone who had an address of 31 Green. So they were asking when they could speak, and I said there'll be a time when the public is allowed to speak. So
Yeah.
I think that they understood that. So the chat is open, but I don't think it goes to everybody.
Okay, because it's coming up as disabled, I guess, for the rest of us and the non-committee members.
So this person who had sent a chat, he is not he's not a commission member. He's in the public. So he was able to send a chat message.
Okay, only when you let me come in to speak do I get all the accesses to the other functions. So if you shut me down, then I may go back to the disabled chat. That's all I want.
Oh,
Okay.
Check to see if there's a button that you can unlock a chat, because as I said, there was someone in the public who was able to send some chat messages through that I responded to.
That you
So
responded
Brent,
to.
Yes.
Okay, well,
Brenna has her,
I have access right now only by virtue of when David turned on my mic and all of that. Now, if you turn it off, I may not have it, but let's hope. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Yana. Appreciate the support.
You're
yeah.
welcome.
So Brenna had her hand up and then David.
I was just going to say that I think there's a distinction between the chat feature and the Q&A feature. So I think that attendees should be able to post questions through the Q&A feature, and then the panelists can respond to them.
And I just put there that she could chat to all the panelists if she wanted to. So I just set that for
Thank
you.
you.
Anna.
Thank
Sure.
you.
So I'm going to remove you from being a panelist, unless you have anything else to say, Ina.
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Julie,
Yes.
I just wanted to know if you'd want to make a comment about, each property is considered individually, and that, working with these solar roof panels today on this property, I don't want it to be misunderstood that means that we're going to always be favorable to them.
Right. In our discussion in the last meeting, Ed went over that point that each property is individual. So,
Right. I just wanted, following the comment that was just made.
yeah. So, but that's a great point, and that's part of our, hopefully our solar policy, that it's clear that each property is regarded on its merits. So anyway, back to this solution for an approval for either architectural asphalt or standing seam with an administrative approval after the flashing details are provided. Is there more discussion, or do we want to move forward with the motion?
What would the motion say, Julie? How would you phrase the motion?
That either one would be acceptable pending an administrative review from Elizabeth and myself.
Sounds good to me.
Of the details, I think is important.
Of installation and flashing details.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, thanks, Shirley. Daniel, could you do the roll?
Julie Capizoli,
Yes.
Shirley Satterfield,
Yes.
Elric Endersby,
Yes.
Roger Shatskin,
Yes.
Rena Campbell,
Yes.
Celia Tazalar,
Yes.
Robert Bonzenbush,
Yes.
Tom White,
Yes.
David Shore.
Yes.
All right. So, Jessica, we look forward to talking to you. I hope your roof hangs in there for a few more weeks.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the help, and we'll definitely keep you posted.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we're moving on to 29 Green Street, and Elizabeth and Daniel, could you bring everybody in that needs to come in?
Who needs to come in, Julie?
The applicant, maybe the architect, is Max Hayden here. Maybe, I don't know if they have a lawyer. And where's Elizabeth?
I think Ryan Kennedy is the attorney.
I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm trying to move them over. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I was muted by mistake.
There may be a few who are more the public. So does the public get moved in at this time too, or?
No, just when it's public comment.
Okay.
So, Ryan, I've got, oh, wait, here's Sam. Okay. I see the other one. Okay, so I think that we should have all 4 of your team here, right? Okay, great.
Okay, and everybody is allowed to share their screen, right?
Yes, let's see about that. Let's see. All panelists, yes. All
Great.
panelists, yes.
Okay, so everyone's allowed to share their screen. Let's start with Elizabeth. You wrote a report.
Yes.
Did you want to start with that?
Yes.
Okay.
So the applicant, Samir Bore, did I pronounce that correctly? I'm sorry if I didn't, has filed an application pursuant to the Princeton Borough Land Use Ordinance to demolish the existing house on the site and construct a new house and attached garage. Oh, before I move, I think Shirley, you wanted to recuse yourself, right?
Yes.
Okay, and she's going to go into the public. So let me place you back in. Sorry. Other site improvements include new paved driveways, a fence, AC units, and generator. D and C variances are required for this application. The project site is identified as block 17.02, lot 63 on the Princeton tax map with an address of 29 Green Street. It is located in the R4 zone and situated on the north side of Green Street, the 4th house from the corner of John Street. The property sits within the residential neighborhood of the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District of the Municipal Zoning Overlay Map. Since this application is in the jurisdiction of the Zoning Board of Adjustments, HPC serves as advisory to their board. And pursuant to Section 379, Section 2, HPC shall review the preservation plan and provide their recommendations to the Board of Jurisdiction and provide a report or testify at the meeting. So the description of the project is that the subject property is designated on Princeton's Historic Overlay District as Type 2, which the Commission is aware is subject to preservation plan for review for any changes visible from the public right-of-way, and any painting or added other surface coloring to an unpainted surface or added pre-primed and pre-finished material is for their review. Weiss Preservation Planning LLC prepared a property inventory survey in 2015 for the subject parcel. 20 Green Street is classified in their report as a non-contributing property to the overall setting and significance of the historic district. The house was built circa 1870 in a vernacular style. The building is a large 2-story house for this neighborhood that was added to and altered through the years. It has a low raised stucco foundation and asphalt shingle roof and is clad in aluminum siding. The house is presented in 3 sections. So I just want to be able to share, if I can share this. So the members can see. So this is the existing house. So it's constructed in 3 sections. So the front part, which faces the street with a gable portion, a cross gable middle section, which is this section right where the car is, and the rear section, which is a similar size to the front part of the house. So the main entrance is on the east side elevation under an aluminum awning. Small 1/1 replacement windows are regular pattern within each section, but different from the other sections. Neighbors recall a house that once stood between the subject lot and the house on lot 6 to its east, so the other property over here, that there was a house there that was moved and added on to this house at 29 Green Street. There's a separate entrance to a 2nd floor apartment that's accessed from an exterior stairs on the northwest corner of the house that wraps around to the rear elevation in the back. So existing conditions is that the property slopes from the rear yard to the northwest property corner towards Green Street. There are 2 existing gravel driveways. One extends along the west side of the building and the other along the east side, which ends near the main entrance, as you can see here, of the building. There's a 10-inch caliber street tree located in the right-of-way between the 2 driveways. I believe there's probably only one there now. So the proposed application As the HPC may recall, the applicant presented a concept plan at HPC's meeting on September 16, 2019, and they are now returning with a fully designed application. The applicant proposes to demolish the existing house and reconstruct a new house in almost the same footprint as currently exists. So I want to pull that up so the commission members can see that. Let's see. So here's the site plan. So you can see the footprint is almost in the same position where the existing footprint is now. The new house footprint will increase by 2 square feet. So the existing is at 1,568 square feet and it increases to 1,570 square feet. In the rear yard is a 1.5 car garage attached to the house by a 10-foot long covered breezeway, which is this. The garage will be 1 story and contain 37 square feet of space, access under the breezeway from the backyard patio through to the driveway. It'll be attached from the ground to the roof with wood lattice framed with columns. The height of the existing house closest to the street is nearly 28 feet, and in the rear it's 23.5 feet. The new house will be 29.8 feet by the street and 28.3 feet in the back. The garage is proposed at 14 feet wide and 21 feet long, and its height will be 13 feet and 5¼ inches. Other site improvements include 2 AC units and a generator off the west elevation near the back of the house. No trees are identified on the plans to be removed as part of this application. So to go over the improvements to the house. So the existing house, which was discussed, is 2 stories, 1,568 square feet, is proposed to be demolished. A new house is proposed at 2.5 stories at 1,570 square feet. It'll be built with similar 3 sections design as existing, which is the one in the front, one in the middle, and the one in the back. It will have gable roofs and 2 chimneys situated in the west building elevation on the front and rear sections of the house. A new front porch is featured on the south elevation facing the street, which is here. The main entrance will continue to be on the east elevation under a small covered entry. The new construction will be 3 bay facing street. Windows and doors will be symmetrically aligned between floors on all building elevations. Windows will be 2/2, including the smaller 2/2 attic windows. Louver shutters will accompany windows on the side elevations on the front and rear section of the house on the 1st and 2nd floors. On the back of the house will be Oriole-style triple windows on the 2nd floor with brackets. Double doors with transoms on the 1st floor will open onto a new patio. So hardy plank siding will be used for the new house and the garage, and board will be used for the building trim. Standing seam metal roofing will be installed on the house, garage, and the breezeway. So I just want to kind of bring that up so the commission members can see just from the rendering. So again, so the standing seam will be on the house and the garage, and then over the front porch, and the main entrance will be the Epdm roofing. And you can see in the report, there's a list of material, which I'm not going to go through. I'm sure the architect will review that. Let's move on to the 1.5 car garage. Again, that's going to be 294 square feet, 1 story. Other improvements, as we talked about, is going to have, it's going to continue to have 2 existing curb cuts. I want to see if I can pull that up for you so you can see it. So it's going to continue to have the 2 curb cuts. The one on the east side will extend back to the garage with a slight angle to maneuver into the new garage. And on the west side will be, it'll be slightly widened from 8.7 feet to 9 feet wide on the west side. Both driveways will now be asphalt They're also proposing a patio in the back, which is going to be 500 to 200 square feet. And there's also going to be a fence that's proposed back here, a 6-foot-high wood slatted fence, which is intended to match it to the neighbors along the rear property here. So this application, since it is a zoning application, obviously it has some variances. And there's a D variance, which is for floor area, and there are bulk variances, and there's neighborhood character variances. So to summarize, the proposed improvements will reduce the FAR from 0.5, but will still be 11% greater than the 40% maximum allowable. The impervious coverage is 5.2% less, but will still exist 10.8% greater than allowable. The main entrance will continue to be on the east elevation, which is actually a violation to the neighborhood character requirements, which requires it to be off the front. 2 driveways will continue to exist, as the neighborhood character really only allows for 1. And the side yard setback for the driveways, which requires a minimum of 3 feet, again, a part of the neighborhood character requirement, is not going to meet that requirement. And new variances that are required by the garage does not meet the minimum rear and side yard requirements. So the criteria for review of this application is listed, and we're just going to go down to the comments and recommendations. So the applicant is asked, they do have a new peak. They have a new peak gravel walk that goes to the front door, and which is only a few feet off of the proposed asphalt driveway. So the applicant is just asked if it is necessary to have both those since they're so close to each other. The other comment to the applicant is that a roof plan would be helpful, and the architect did send me something over the weekend, so I'm going to address it to him to be able to present that during his time. So there's a few items that the report asks the commission to consider. So currently a fairly large house sits on the property, and the proposed house is almost the same size footprint. However, the new construction will be 2 feet taller at the front, closest to the street, and 4.5 taller in the rear. The commission is asked, will the increase be proportionate to the adjacent houses and appropriate along the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District's streetscape? The skylight is located on the east elevation near the back of the house. And I guess the question to the commission and probably the applicant is that going to be visible from the right of way? A new 1.5 car garage is proposed. The breezeway that attaches the garage to a house is designed that is not common within this neighborhood. Garages are typically detached and located in the rear yard, although there are numerous driveways that are existing that do not have garages. And then the east driveway will be asphalt and extend approximately 170 feet to the rear where the new garage is. To reduce the amount of impervious surface and minimize the visual impact of the asphalt, the commission is asked if they would consider recommending the 2 16-inch vehicle tires to replace part of this to reduce that amount of asphalt, similar to what they had approved at 20 Green Street across the street. And then number 4, which has to do with product information, which the applicant is asked to present, and number 5, which talks about questions specifically to the applicant. I defer that to the applicant to address those items.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. I think we should then turn it over to the applicant. I don't know if Max, well, I don't know if you guys should choose who you want to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ryan Kennedy here. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I think you got the list of everyone who's here, as they were all admitted to the room. So first, thank you for hearing us. Thank you for keeping these going. I know this is really tough to do, and you and Elizabeth and your staff are moving mountains so that people can still move forward, and it is much appreciated, as difficult as it all is. I won't jinx it by saying you make it look easy, but fingers crossed that that this comes up here. Maybe I'll ask Ed, your board attorney. We do have the applicant, our engineer Jim Kamalik, and Max Hayden, our architect. If you'd like to have them all sworn in at once, perhaps, and then we can go through our presentation if that works on your end.
Thank you, Ryan. All of the folks that are going to testify, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Now, for the, I hope, ease in administration here, we've taken all of our photos and kind of clips of the materials that you have on a hard copy and the materials that were put on the municipality's website for public inspection that we can flip through. I don't know if we want to call it an exhibit, but something we'll provide additional copies afterwards as well. But it's essentially a connection of everything that you've seen plus some photos and additional materials that Elizabeth had requested in advance of the meeting. So if it's all right, I'll attempt to share my screen if that's okay, Madam Chairwoman.
Yes, absolutely. I think we enabled you to share, so.
Well, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Give me 1 second. All right, is everyone able to see a photo of the rendering?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My one hurdle down. Max, are you still on?
I'm on.
Excellent.
Can you hear me?
We sure can. Thank you. So what I'd like to do with Max is kind of start walking through. He'll predominantly be our witness tonight. Again, we have the applicant here, as well as our engineer for to talk about any of the site issues if necessary, including a landscaping plan. One of the comments was that they'd like to see one, and we had one put together by Jim Kamalik of Kencho Resources. But just to start out though, as Elizabeth said, this is a non-contributing building in a historic district, and we've got an applicant and who's eager to make it an appropriate fit for the neighborhood for his family. You'll see things like the inclusion of the front porch and reuse of some of the front cobblestone foundation. Unfortunately, not much else is salvageable. We've got, we'll take you through a photo tour of the interior, but this home had been perhaps abused or used differently during the 60s and 70s, and you'll see what the result of that was. So Max, as we start here, this is a slightly updated rendering from what we printed and given the board. Is that correct?
Right. Just shows more properly scaled shutters and some brick piers at the front porch.
Okay. Just to orient the board, I know everyone's probably familiar with this neighborhood, but here we've got an overhead photo showing the location of the site as well as the zoning map here. This is clipped from our civil site plans. Jim, you want, or, excuse me, Max, you want to tell us what we're looking at here?
Well, on the left is a Sanborn map. I believe it's from 1870, and it shows the house. I think it's the fourth one in on the right from John Street. The third one in on the right from John Street. And the photograph is head on of the house. It's a narrow house. Looking at the Sanborn map, it led me to believe that the house was originally configured more like the tan and brown trim house across the street. And 2 doors down from Yana Moore's house, there's another mid-19th century house that had a gable facing the side yard, not facing the front. I think Mr. Tadlock may have renovated the front. He did renovate the front of the house and perhaps changed the roof angle. Maybe it was changed earlier.
All right, this is another
Here's a
view.
side view, three-quarter angle of the front and the driveway side. And in the middle, you can see the house that originally stood to the right of 29 Green Street, straddling Sam's property and the Winters property. And they were all connected sometime by Mr. Tadlock in the 70s. This is a view looking down Green Street towards Dorothea House, so you're looking west. To the left is the Honstein property at 20 Green Street. To the right is a snippet of Yana Moore's house, Dr. and Mrs. Winters' house, the other Dr. Winters' house, and then you can see Sam's blue house, 29 Green Street, behind the tree. Across the street again, all these houses are from the mid-1800s to the late 1800s, maybe early 1900s. That's directly across the street. The house to the extreme right is the one I referenced earlier, the tannish yellow house with the brown trim. That has what I've been told is the salesman's porch. Yana told me that. And we feel like the 29 Green Street looked quite a bit like that house originally. And we based our design on that. This is looking east towards the Arts Council and Witherspoon Street, Dr. Withers' house, Dr. and Mrs. Withers' house, Yana Moore's house, and there's the house next to Yana that we believe 29 Green Street also looked like. So, you know, in Princeton, a lot of architecture was repetitive, and this neighborhood is no exception. And there's our rendering again. So it's a narrow house, but we went back to the 3-bay design. The new design is almost the same, almost exactly the same footprint as the previous house. The house was largely remodeled in the 70s. There is nothing original intact on the interior of the house, molding, plaster, flooring. Everything was swapped out with new windows, new doors, new drywall, new flooring. In fact, when we get to some basement photographs, you will see that the front half of the house, which was ostensibly the oldest part, was totally rebuilt. The floor framing is all modern. That's the front view on the left with the front porch, and the right is from the backyard showing the garage and the rear of the house. These are, again, the garage elevation, rear and front view, and a roof plan. We chose to do 2 gables facing the sides and putting a gable spanning the 2 to break up the mass of the house. And the next slide, I believe, shows the side elevations. The top rendering shows the side facing the driveway, and the bottom rendering faces west. And it's a simplified version of what exists there now. We'll have a photograph that shows the roof actually steps up again on the existing house for the stair to work. Ours is a little simpler. But we tried to pay homage to the house. We would have a standing seam roof in the next slide. That's just depicting a typical standing seam roof, both on the upper roof and on the porch roof. We were going for a very simple light fixture on the outside.
Yeah. And Max, just not that there was confusion, but you know, the initial submission some time ago had 2 light fixtures, a hanging and a different sconce. Just to confirm, this sconce that we're looking at here is the proposed exterior light fixture, and that there wouldn't be a hanging fixture. Is that correct? No, that
right. This is actually a sconce. I don't think we have any. Right.
Right, thank you.
I'm sorry, my connection is kind of glitchy, so I'm trying to hear everything. This is a suggested paving pattern for the patio in the backyard. There are a lot of blue stones within the yard. Actually, most of the yard is blue stone underneath the crabgrass. It's incredible how much bluestone Mr. Tadlock bought, a lot of it. The brick would be sympathetic to the original type of brick that would have been used throughout the neighborhood. And that is the existing fence on the west side of the property. And we would match that on the east side.
On the right, Max, that's the
And in
proposed
that
fence.
photograph, you see the staircase to the apartment above.
Sorry, Max, we still have you?
Sorry, Ryan.
Oh, I just want to make sure you're still there. I heard some pops.
Yeah, I'm here.
Well,
Want to go on to the next slide? That'd be great. The windows will be similar to the windows that we used at 29 Green Street, which were the Pella Architect series. They'd be clad on the exterior, but they have a traditional mutton bar pattern. They'd be simulated divided light, so they will look like an authentically divided light window.
That's the windows they're putting.
Next slide, please.
Said there was something.
The gutters and downspouts would be half round, and the shutters would be appear to be, they would be operable for shutters by Timberland or Shuttercraft or someone like that. They would be not cheap shutters, but really not shutters. The siding would be hardy plank, which has been around now for about 20 years. It's a lap siding. It looks a lot better than vinyl and stands up better than cedar and has less maintenance. There would be some lattice on the, perhaps on the front porch and or on the connector to the garage. And the side door would be a simple panel door. The color is a Sharon Williams color. It is a blue-gray, a little bit richer than what's on the house now. And the window sashes themselves would be black, and the window frames and most of the fascia boards, soffits, rake boards, corner boards would be white. Trim would be 5/4 by 4 with a drip cap and a 2-inch sill. And the balusters would be PVC with a mahogany top rail, and of a substantial quality that looks very traditional. The garage door, I know there's a little bit of a conflict here. The garage door would be a overhead acting door, but it would look like a carriage house door. And the architectural drawing to the right is more accurate. That's the height of the existing house. It's roughly 27 feet above grade from the front and a little closer to the ground in the rear. Site plan improvements, we're proposing to keep both driveways, maintain a patio in the back. In fact, we'd be making it quite a bit smaller because truly Mr. Tadlock really did had a lot of bluestones, and we are adding a garage, which is kind of typical for the neighborhood. We are reutilizing the front foundation. We were asked to early on to consider using it, and we'll use the old rubble stone foundation. Is actually in better shape than the concrete block foundation in the back. So the house will be located right where it is in the front.
So, Max, that was one of the questions that I think was asked. does that dictate a little bit the front height? And does that front height still relate appropriately with the houses next door?
The house to the left is quite a bit taller. The house to the right is probably similar. The drawing that was shown earlier, the architectural drawing of the elevation, it's actually the middle section of the roof. I had drawn something incorrectly and I noticed it on Saturday or Sunday. So the middle section of the roof is actually a bit lower than previously posted. But I mean, the house I think is very compatible to the neighborhood, and actually the front roof line will be pushed back because it's no longer a front facing gable. It's the slope of the roof will be at the front. So the house should appear a little shorter, in fact, than it presently does.
You know, perhaps I'll ask Jim to chime in here a little bit because we went through the trouble of putting it together. But, you know, initially we, you know, would have certainly proposed some appropriate landscaping, but did not have a plan. And here we did put one together, you know, to respond to the HPC memo in advance here. So Jim, you want to just maybe quickly walk us through what type of things could be included?
Sure. On the landscaping plan, we basically included what would be in keeping with the historic context of the house, boxwood foundation plantings at the front, as well as on the right side, extending back towards the garage. We have rhododendron on the left-hand side as foundation plantings given the light conditions. And then we also proposed 3 trees along the rear property line. So, you know, it's not a large lot, but we can certainly provide what would be expected on the lot for foundation plantings and a few new trees.
And Jim, while we're up here, you know, there was a question about the pea gravel path. Is there a way to curb that, or something that could be appropriate to keep those in place if that is part of the plan?
Yeah, if that remains, there can be some edging around that so that it's kept in a neat, orderly way.
Excellent. All right. All right, so I'm gonna bring back Max here to start going through the you know, just walking us through the house, and just so we can see, you know, the current condition, unfortunately, and what, you know, I know it's a non-contributing structure, but you know, just what's there, and you know what they tried to dig through to save, which is unfortunately not much.
So here's the view of the side entry door. There's a staircase. There's a drop ceiling. All the doors are flush wood doors, which are really hollow core and probably from the 70s. The flooring is oak, but again, from the 1970s. Next slide, please. That's looking again at the, it's not so much a drop ceiling as it's acoustical tile. There's some damage to it. The door is a metal door. There's a bit of an arch. All of the windows were replaced at the time. There's a little bit of a window sill, kind of a plant shelf on some of the windows. If you go next slide. The one kind of cool in a kitschy type of way is the fireplace. I thought it was just a fake fireplace. It's actually a gas log. It's a cast concrete unit. We actually turned the gas off because it looked a little dangerous, but it's not original to the house. It was brought here and certainly gave a large room kind of some charm, but the room is pretty nondescript. When we go to some further slides, you'll see that the rooms are divided into 2. This is one of the rooms that's divided into 2. I guess it was used as a dining room. Sam brought along a rug carpet tube that was pretty straight, and you can see how much the house is settled in the middle. This is the piece that used to be next door and was joined to the front of the house, and the central beam has sunken in about 4 inches. And in less than 10 feet, it's a very noticeable thing. Here's the kitchen. Floor is in very bad shape. The cabinets are in bad shape. The kitchen is very outdated. and more than outdated, it's not in good condition. Those are actually cutting boards that were put in the floor to patch the floor. This is looking from the kitchen. There are some weird hallways in the house. It's not a flowing plan. It's very cut up into a bunch of different rooms. I'm not sure what that hallway was for. Here's a bathroom. Certainly it's, well, I don't know if it's still serviceable, but it's from the 70s with the marbleized paneling and the mauve. This is a room to the west. Plants are growing in from the windows. The windows are extremely small. None of them match code for egress. None of them are what I would call period size. They're actually very small. They're 2 feet wide, many of them. And a house this age would have had a 28-inch wide window, maybe a 32-inch window. So these are definitely undersized. There is one 6-panel door in the house, but it's not old. There's the window with the plant. This is an upstairs bedroom. This again is in the moved section. You can see how much the floor sloped. You also see a slide coming up soon of Sam standing in the room. Sam is about 6'2" tall. The ceilings are maybe 6'6". This is one of the bathrooms upstairs. This is one of the bedrooms over the front living room. The house is only 20 some odd feet wide, so these rooms are less than 10 feet wide, and they're quite long and quite narrow and really not comfortably shaped. And the ceiling again is acoustical tile. There's the stairway railing. Nothing again is original. You can see the clamshell molding. The door to the right is about 6'3" high, maybe. Actually, I think it's more like 6 feet tall. And that's because of the lower ceiling. The tiles are falling down. It was an elderly person. It looked like an elderly person lived here at one point. There's Sam. So he's got about 2 inches above his head. And those are again, the undersized windows, which are quite low to the floor and really not positioned properly. This is the back door, which is to the second floor is broken into a small apartment, and you get to it via a pressure-treated stair and deck that's not in the best of shape. You see the aluminum siding, and the brick actually has a big hole. The brick chimney has a big hole at the base. And there's a large concrete slab that was used as a patio and is pitched somewhat towards the house. That's the basement stairway that is on the eastern side of the property. You can see that it's buckling. Concrete block wall is buckling in the middle. That will be removed. This is the front part of the basement, and there's been some water infiltration. It was finished off with drywall. It hasn't had a dehumidifier in it perhaps ever, and of course, we all know how basements like to get moldy, and here's a good one. You'll notice the lolly column and the beam is contemporary. Although this is the oldest section of the house, you'll see a photograph soon of the framing. The framing was all redone in the front section of the house, so I don't believe that any of the front of the house is original. Maybe an exterior wall, and I certainly would defer to a neighbor, but that is the framing of the living room, which is in the front of the house facing Green Street. And that is consistent with what is in that whole framing area. This is the middle of the house. This is the house that was moved from in between 29 Green and the Winters house. The framing is mid to late 18th century. It's not interesting. It's fairly random. It's full of wiring and holes, and really not a lot to recommend it. And that is the original, the only original fabric you can see anywhere of the house.
Max, why do you think it's 18th century?
I'm sorry?
Why do you attribute it to the 18th century?
I'm going to say 19th century, not 18th.
Thank you.
I think it's mid to late 19th. It's sawn lumber. It's nothing special. Here you see a lot of posts holding up the flooring. They're kind of random. There's some cracking in the foundation wall, and the electrical wiring is a mess. It's a nice deep foundation. That's about what it has going for it. There is water infiltration throughout. And the mechanical system is a whole bunch. That's the door leading to the basement door. There you have it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you, does anyone have questions about the presentation so far? Or comments? I know there are probably members of the public, so I wanted to get our comments first. Cecilia?
I have a question about the application in general, because this seems to be an application for a new house in the historic district, and with some zoning elements, variances included. What's missing is the demolition plan application. That wasn't checked off in the application, and I want to make sure that we are going about this properly, because so I would ask if the applicant is aware of the section of the ordinance pertaining to demolition and moving of structures in the historic district, and if they are complying with that section.
I'll answer that, and the short answer is yes. We have noticed for this meeting and provided the materials, in accordance with that section, and that is why we've stepped through as much as we had of the existing structure that you've seen there. Unfortunately, we'd love there to be more worth saving in that front cobblestone area. But yes, we will certainly leave it to Elizabeth and Ed to confirm that we technically complied, but the posting and the newspaper publications, and you'll also note that in addition to the formal notice that's required, we also sent a more neighborly cover with the technical notice to try to explain why we're here and how to find the information. And with the Zoom meetings, even in a regular time, those notices are a little cryptic. And we tried to be a little bit more neighborly on top of the items that we're required to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. And I will confirm that the applicant did do the noticing in the appropriate time frame, and they did give proof of the 200-foot noticing as required as well.
Okay, so it was just a little administrative oversight to not check that box off in the application, but they've met all of and will continue to meet the requirements of the demolition ordinance.
I'll represent that that's correct from the applicant's standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so are there questions about the existing structure that we have, or would you like to move on to comment on the proposed structure? If there aren't any comments, we could always go to the public comment, because I know there are people waiting for that.
One very minor thing is that I noticed that the handrails were to be mahogany, whereas everything else was painted white. And that's really not typical in the area. In the area, it would be typical for everything to be painted white. It's a minor point, but I think it's out of character.
Good point. I know this is a new way of doing. Normally we would be around a conference table and having more of a back and forth. So I'll just invite Max and the applicant you know, to chime in on that if necessary.
Yeah, if we can speak to that, Maura, I thank you for being here today and hearing our application. This is my wife, Susan,
Hello.
sitting beside. Yeah, we actually like the idea of a white handrail there. We'd be open to that.
Okay. Are there other comments about the new design? Questions about materials? I believe so. Hardy plank siding, standing seam roof. What is the porch made out of?
The flooring would be either mahogany or there's a product called Eritis, which is a composite material, but it has the same dimension as a porch floor tongue and groove, and it appears really quite nice. I mean, that could be something we submit. Perhaps you would view administratively, or you know, we're happy to do things that way if the board would consider it.
Right. And then the last thing is, if Ryan could explain again the variances that are needed for this project?
Absolutely. Give me, let me pull up my cheat sheet 1 second here. So currently, this is a pre-existing non-conforming lot in many respects. So, you know, it's already undersized for lot area and lot width. It is currently non-conforming for coverage and floor area. We would be bringing both of those down. So 49.5% is the permitted coverage. Right now it's 65.5%, and we'd be bringing down to 60.3%. Floor area, 44% is permitted. It's currently 52.5%, and we're proposing to reduce it to 51.1%. There's also a variance needed for the garage side setback. Under the neighborhood character, it's 5 feet is permitted now, but with such a narrow lot, that's still tough to get. So we're proposing 3 feet there, as well as the rear yard setback. 35 is required, and 14.7 is what we're proposing for that. I believe that rear yard, garage side yard, the reduced coverage and the reduced floor area are the variances that are required. You know, in addition to just the non-conforming nature of the lot for lot area and width.
Ryan, if I could just add, Ryan, the one of the points that was brought up in Elizabeth's letter about the walkway to the house, that was something we added to the plan in order to avoid another variance. But if everyone feels that the driveway is enough of a walkway, we'd be okay doing that. It would also reduce the impervious coverage further.
All right.
Could I just say something?
Yeah. Yes.
Basically, throughout the entire district, the variances just are not met. The variances really are not appropriate for the district, I think. In other words, if one did meet the variances, one would end up with something which was not in character with the district.
Oh, so you're saying that most houses would require variances?
Yeah, and if all the variances were instead of having variances, all the setbacks were met and everything else, it wouldn't be in character with the district as a whole.
Yeah, the zoning is so off area.
It's totally wrong in the area.
Yeah. Are there other comments or questions before I put it over to the public? Okay, so Elizabeth, do you want to see who's waiting?
Yes, we do have one person, but I do want the commission to realize something. Shirley and Yaina, when they were removed, they now cannot get back on, and they've been trying since they were taken off as panelists. And they've tried several times, and they are not able to get back in, even using the public link. So I'm just letting you know that they did want to comment, but they're not able to get back on. So I'm going to transfer over, let's see, there's 3 people with their hands up. So the first person is going to be from the address of 31 Green Street. There's no name with it, but I will promote to panelists.
Elizabeth, while you're elevating them to speaker status, perhaps the other speakers would be able to dial in by phone, might be treated as a different user in a second.
They did try that. Shirley tried that as well, and she couldn't get on. And she, in the past, has gone to a neighbor's house, but right now she's not mobile, so she's not able to do that. So it might be a situation where I know that she does have comment because she had to recuse herself since her property backs up.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? So my name is Andrea Otazinska. I live next door at 31 Green Street.
I'm sorry, could you say your name again?
Andrea Otazinska. My husband is Peter Ignat, and I live next door to this proposed project at 31 Green Street. I'm next door.
Mrs. Ozinski, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Hello. Having lived through a full-on gut of a historic property in another place and time where they didn't raise the entire building, they were just gutting the interior of it. My husband has asthma, one of my children has severe asthma, and we're in a time of COVID and pre-existing conditions. One of my questions pertains to dust. I mean, this is really quite extreme because we're very, very close. We're about 8 to 9 feet away. I'm very concerned about dumpsters, dust, vermin. I don't know, are you planning on tenting? I don't know anything about how this demolition is going to be handled. The other thing is that it's been a long, hard road this last 10 plus years with the amount of construction on Green Street. And based on what's going on at 20 Green Street, when it's cold, there was no plan for the construction workers to park somewhere else. We were promised that they would all park on Paul Robeson, but they park on Green Street. And when it's cold, their trucks are idling. And when it's hot, their trucks are idling for AC reasons. So I don't know where they're going to be. They even for the Honstein home, the 20 Green Street project, they were pulling into Mr. Bore's driveway right underneath our windows. Trucks were there all the time. So I'm concerned about vermin, dust, the trucks, the pollution. It's disappointing that an asphalt driveway is planned, to the left of Mr. Bore's project. And we're just very worried. This kind of exacerbates an already tough, environmentally, tough project of where you're pulling down a building this size in a very, very dense area. My other issue is children. There are a ton of children on this block, and again, fences we were told there was going to be fencing around 20 Green Street. I think some of the neighbors there had to argue to even get some tape put up and some small posts put up. So this is an issue. And my last issue is the grade of the former Tadlock property kind of really slopes down against our house. When there are heavy rains, we get rivers coming at us. So that's a concern that I have. So I'll turn it over to the designers and architects and owners. Thank you.
So, and Andrea, thanks for the question. If I could just address the dust issue, definitely with as close as your house is to ours, we would have to put, and I don't think it would alleviate all the dust, but some sort of tarping along the side of the property when we're doing our demolition. But without a doubt, there would be a lot less dust with a full demo of the house, because that would come down in a few days, and the regular dust associated with construction would be much less than going into old walls, old roofs, old floor decks, and so on. Your other question about the driveway material, I guess we're proposing, whether it's asphalt or pebble, it's all considered impervious, so we would be open to to looking at different materials there. And as far as the grade in the back of the property, I think, Jim, if you could respond to that. We were talking about reducing that slope to your property because it really does drop off quite a bit. And just to jump back, the last thing, we would absolutely put a construction fence around the property during construction, something with a mesh net, which again will cut down some of the dust, but won't eliminate it by any means. But we'll do what we can. There's parking for trades. That's always a difficult one to deal with, but there is room on our site to afford trucks to pull in towards the back. But the idling and those things, those are without a doubt an issue. We would have to maintain that.
I would maybe recommend, well, I vote for pebble, not asphalt, but I would recommend that maybe you look into doing something maybe with the YMCA for parking, or Palmer Square, or I don't know, but I know this, and on top of which we have, just so that you're aware of what it's like to be here, on a daily basis, there is the renovation of the Paul Robeson project at the end of the block, the Arts Council, and the church. So it's painful. I've had 3 flats, it's the nails, it's really, really painful. And it's been over a decade of it. And, I wish somebody at City Hall would maybe make a plan for this next big demo project.
All right, thank you. Elizabeth, are there others waiting?
Yes.
Actually,
Okay.
Let me get the next one. Wendy Rivers.
While Elizabeth's doing that, maybe Jim, do you want to say a few things about the stormwater? I know we have our engineer, our site engineer here as well.
Yeah, I guess 2 points on that. One is on the grading plan that was submitted, we are actually going to convey the water towards the street. So we have some small swales that go parallel to the property line to keep water from draining onto the neighboring property, which will be an enhancement. And then secondly, we're also decreasing the impervious coverage.
Thanks, Jim. So hopefully it will be better than the current condition. That's the plan.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so Wendy Rivers has been promoted. Wendy, if you want to unmute yourself, you can speak.
Come in.
Hi.
Hi.
Rivers, do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
I am Dr. Wendy Rivers. I live at 25 Green Street, next door to the proposed site. I am a 5th generation African American of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. My family has lived at 21 and 25 Green Street since the 1930s. I have a statement I am going to read. It was written by myself and my brothers. My brother Scott is an architect, a residential architect, and my brother Bob, he is actually cited as one of the references in the WISE report. His senior thesis at Princeton University was about the Witherspoon Jackson district. He has a degree in urban planning, historic preservation, and he is currently the director of planning, the executive director of planning for the city of New Orleans. So I will read the following statement. He is hoping to be on this Zoom call at some point, so he may want to clarify some of my comments. Thank you, first of all, for letting me speak. And I also appreciate the fact that a historic architect who had worked at 20 Green Street was invited to help design this house. There are still a number of concerns, however, that severely undermine the merits of the proposal. First of all, the proposed demolition of the existing structure is being justified due to the non-contributing status. However, that very same non-contributing design is being relied upon to justify the atypical massing, orientation, and overall size that is driving the need for variances for this proposal. In other words, the applicant is arguing that the existing structure is so out of character and beat down that it needs to be turned down, and then is relying on the exact elements that make it out of character to justify the variances for the new structure. To be clear, all of the characteristics of the existing structure's design, the massing, the overall size, are the least historic, as they are the result of two structures being combined in the 1970s. The applicant forms and staff reports clearly state that the criteria must be met in order to justify a variance. Moreover, both also state that it is the applicant's burden to prove that the criteria have been met, and that the applicant must meet this burden by responding to specific questions posed on the application. The application includes a brief 2-paragraph narrative statement in support of variance application, which simply states that the applicant seeks to replace the existing structure and that the existing lot has pre-existing nonconformities. There is no statement identifying any exceptional characteristics of the lot, nor is there any statement identifying any practical difficulties or hardships that exist. There is nothing suggesting that the conditions purportedly causing a hardship are unique to the subject property and generally not applicable to other properties in the district. In short, there is nothing satisfying the criteria for the requested C variances. The same holds true for the D variances. Instead, the applicant seems to be arguing that the variance should be granted simply because they want a house as big as the 2-family structure they are tearing down. Bigger if you add the breezeway and garage. This is hardly a justifiable basis for replicating a non-contributing, non-conforming structure in a historic district. The new design that is consistent with the architecture character of the historic district is not only possible, but is far more preferable than the proposed design. The applicant seeks to utilize a similar massing arrangement as the existing structure. A far more appropriate massing arrangement would be that which is prevalent throughout the historic district. A more traditional additive massing arrangement, a large main mass which is oriented to the street and smaller secondary masses located to the side or rear. Lack of historically appropriate street orientation. The applicant seeks to mimic the existing structure by orienting the main entrance to the side facing the driveway. It is inconsistent with the street-facing orientation found on nearly every other historic home in the neighborhood. Moreover, it is not a necessity in light of the narrowness of the lot. My house is the same width and has a traditional street front entrance. Inappropriate front deck. According to the applicant, the proposed design includes a special feature on the street-facing elevation that is modeled upon other porches in the neighborhood. In fact, what is being proposed is not a porch at all. It's an inappropriate front deck. Just about every actual porch in the neighborhood has an opening, usually with stairs connecting to the main entrance to the sidewalk. That is because historically, And certainly in this neighborhood, porches have existed to provide a welcoming transitional element between public space of the outdoors and private space of the indoors. Fake design elements do not belong in a historic context. East driveway. The clearing of the site gives the applicant an opportunity to provide a driveway that complies with the required 3-foot distance from the east property line. The variance is necessitated by the proposed non-conforming design, not the exceptional circumstances of the property. West driveway. I wholeheartedly agree with the staff that a second driveway is not appropriate. Moreover, if the west driveway is eliminated, the applicant has an opportunity to shift the footprint of the house to the west, allowing for a more prominent main mass at the street front. Permeability. The proposed impervious coverage far exceeds the maximum permitted. Again, the fact that the applicant is tearing down the site provides an opportunity and an obligation to present a compliant design. I do not see a drainage or stormwater management plan. If a variance is to be granted for excessive impervious coverage, the applicant should be required to capture the excess stormwater on site to prevent it from draining into adjacent properties. So I already have water in my basement. Andrea already said she had water in the basement. This is a problem. To conclude, while it is true that many of the variances being requested were granted in the 1970s to permit the existing structure, there does not provide any justification for granting them today. If Princeton is like other jurisdictions, the practice of planning and zoning has changed. Most importantly, the creation of the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District provides a contextual lens that did not exist in the 1970s. Rather than simply reaffirming questionable decisions of the past, every effort must be made to ensure that planning and zoning is implemented in a way that reinforces the architectural and historic significance of the historic district. This application fails to achieve that goal and would set a number of unfortunate precedents if approved. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, thank you. Does the applicant want to respond to that, or do you want to go on with the next question?
I think we'll go to the next question, but just to note that, we certainly intend to, when we get to the zoning board, to have proofs on the variances. Certainly understand that, and we'll, in the normal course, provide that when we get to the zoning board. I just don't want anyone to think that the lack of planning testimony here today is meant to sidestep that so much as that would come at the zoning board part of things.
All right, well, I want to make sure Yaina gets a chance to talk. I know she's on the screen now.
Yes.
So Yaina, are you ready?
Start talking. Oh, yes, here I am.
Okay.
Yes, well, unfortunately, I've not had the benefit of any of the materials, seeing any of the materials that were, that was presented during this meeting. So I'm at quite a disadvantage. But what I do want to echo are the concerns around the extent of construction work that's required by the nature of the intent to demolish the house. I didn't hear, nor could I see, whether existing foundations were being used as the rationale for the placement of the house, which Wendy Rivers' brother did note that it was in the exact position. There seems to be no real rationale for that unless they are reusing a foundation. But it seems to have mixed a lot of concepts around the issue of the many issues of non-compliance with zoning, which we all understand. Some of those issues have to do with the fact that the zoning isn't appropriate. But it shouldn't be used to justify a demo, nor should it be used to cite the building perhaps uncharacteristically. So there needs to be a choice one way or the other, because if the house was going to try to conform more with the neighborhood, regardless of its current status as being non-conforming, non-contributing to the historic character of the neighborhood, it would set back. It would have a front-facing entry, as I thought our new zoning laws with regard to ordinances, with regard to neighborhood character, tried to emphasize front-facing entrances, not decks, that would be more friendly and integrate the inhabitant to the neighborhood. We have a couple of houses, more recently the Hillier properties on Quarry Street, that have taken that same approach to a side entrance. Those neighbors rarely, if ever, see their across the street neighbors by virtue of they do enter their two-car garage and enter through that garage to their houses. But also if they enter the front door and exit the front door, they're all behind gates. So the way in which this has been designed to, in some way, conform to the non-contributing house, but using its side entry, perhaps by using the existing foundation, and then simply placing a deck, but not reorienting the entrance of the house to the street and in line with all of its other neighbors, places it still in a mode of not integrating with the neighborhood. I have a serious concern about those factors. I think visually it is pleasant, but functionally it is not compatible to the way in which our neighborhood works. Front porches, our street facing entries, and a focus on our side-by-side neighbors and integrating ourselves with each other. And that is basically, I really appreciate Wendy's brothers' detailed comments, not having been able to see one sheet of the drawings. I had a quick pass through on some of Andrea's screenshots, thank goodness, because that not having the front entry is the main issue here. The size is not even, for me, as much of an issue in terms of the FAR, because most of the houses in the neighborhood, in the district, don't comply with that. I think that's all that I have. And all that I'm able to contribute, given the lack of having any materials or any real information that I could go by, since I wasn't able to hear the call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And Max, bring up the plan showing the foundation line, because yeah, we are keeping, the idea is to keep the foundation in the front of the house, which is what dictated the placement, again, in that same location. So you missed that part of the presentation. And I think one of the reasons why we felt the side entrance might still be appropriate is, you know, there's a greater distance from our house 29 to Wendy's house next door, which still lends itself to, you know, to opening up sort of to the neighborhood, but we wanted to incorporate that front porch without the entrance, because it just is not an ideal place to enter the house. However, we did want to still have that interaction. So whether or not there are steps to that porch, we're okay with steps to the porch. We just didn't want it to be confused as a front door to the house.
And Max, you want to talk a few more minutes of just about the reuse of the front part of the foundation? I know that when this application first came as a concept review, that was one of the pieces of the puzzle that we were trying to accommodate from the earlier comments on the project, and that kind of dictates where the siting is to an extent.
Well, when I first talked with Elizabeth Kim, she said, well, is there anything that we could utilize? And I said, really, so much of it has been changed. I believe the foundation, the fieldstone foundation is original, and we can certainly keep that. So that's why we did keep it. We did change the massing of the house to reflect what we really felt was the earlier massing of the house. I really think the gable was turned 90 degrees in the 70s, and we really were trying to address the streetscape. And as Sam said, steps from the porch could be put on. I don't believe that the house is as wide as Wendy's. I think her house is a bit wider. This is a very narrow house. It's narrower than 20 Green, certainly. And, it's one of the reasons why Mr. Tadlock put the entry on the side. It made sense. He was able to put the stair in the middle of the house. And, most people still drive in this neighborhood. Everybody, walks to town a bit, but, they drive to work. They drive to go grocery shopping. So it's, this is when history meets modern needs. And sometimes there's a bit of a collision. But, we did try to craft a design that was a little bit kinder and gentler and a little bit more gracious.
All right, Elizabeth, do we have more people waiting to speak?
Yes.
Okay, so we should keep moving with that.
Okay, the next.
May I just make a quick response to Yaina's comment about not being able to review the plans in advance? Because all of the supporting documents for the application are loaded onto the municipal website, but maybe that is not being conveyed to the public, or if you go to the municipal website, you can navigate around and find under the meetings. Every single submittal is loaded up to the website, so members of the public can view that. I just wanted to make that clear.
Yes, I was able to look at some screenshots and drawings. However, the presentation, the verbal by Max, others,
you
was very important.
Got kicked off.
Yeah, exactly. So I couldn't match the.
I just thought you weren't able to look at things before this meeting.
Yeah, and hear it presented together.
You were able to, before the meeting, to look at the application.
No, the drawings are fine. They speak for themselves. I saw those very quickly, but I could not hear the presentation. That is much more, bountiful than just the drawing.
All right,
Okay.
Elizabeth.
Yes, Madam Chair, the next person we'll be elevating is Robert Rivers, so I will do that now.
Okay. Hello.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Mr. Rivers, this is the lawyer. Do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth?
I do.
Sure, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and I do want to echo some of the comments that my sister Wendy had made. And I want you all to, I've heard a lot of things in this meeting that I think answered a lot of the questions that were raised in Wendy's statement, but it also raised a couple more. And so with respect to the foundation, I guess the question is that a requirement of the city or the borough, or is that simply an attempt to reuse a portion of the historic house in a way? I mean, most of the foundation's underground, so it seems to be an element of the historic house that is fairly invisible, yet it seems to be driving all of the decisions about the design and all the decisions or all the requests for variances. So that's one thing. I think that and just for one of the comments, I don't think Wendy was referring to the width of the house. She was referring to the width of the lot, which is my understanding, the basis for saying that the site conditions are driving the need for some of these variances. But I do think, and I understand that the detail of the variances are going to be discussed at the zoning commission hearing. But because the design is basically predicated on the granting of those variances, and the design is being driven by the need for the variances, I think it's appropriate to get some clarity on that. As to some of the design issues that have already come up, certainly the idea of a porch historically, architecturally, is it's a very specific thing. In this neighborhood particularly, porches really help define this community. When I say community, I don't just mean buildings, I mean the people who lived in this community, and who you know, I have pictures of my dad when he was a little kid hanging out on the porch with his parents. That's what made this community. And you know, architecture, front doors, welcoming people into the home through the front, that is kind of the essence of close-knit neighborhoods like this. And so I do think that the standard for a forward-facing entrance and a properly designed porch are there for a reason. And I think by tearing down the house, I think it's a very important element that needs to be put onto the house. And that if the argument is we are going to save some of the historic foundation, but at the same time give up on a lot of the defining characteristics of this historic district, and end up building a new structure that is in many ways as non-conforming as the old house, I think that's a decision that is unfortunate. As to the massing of the structure, again, this is something where the maybe the strict adherence to the existing foundation is driving a massing arrangement that is pretty atypical, not only for the district but historically. In most places, historic buildings, the massing is you have a large main center mass, you know, a main mass, and then the secondary additive masses usually go to the rear or the side. Here you've got a smaller mass that is kind of a front mass because you don't have a door on it, but you've got the side-facing gables, and you've got the front deck, but then you've got a larger middle mass, and then it steps down to a smaller mass again in the back. So it again, it seems to be that a decision about maybe being able to reuse an element of the historic house that is non-contributing, that is going to be not so visible, is really driving a lot of the decisions about how the design needs to be then, and then ending up with a need to be granting variances. The last thing I'll say is just the driveways. I think that you know, the way this site developed is, you know, the two lots that exist there now between my sister's house and the house that we're talking about, it used to be 3 lots. And so the middle lot was subdivided away into 2 lots. The house that sat there was tacked onto the back of this house, which is one of the things I think makes this house largely non-conforming. And because it was creating a 2-family structure, I think that's why they ended up with 2 driveways, because otherwise the 2 families that live there would have to keep you know, jogging and calling each other up every time they wanted to get their car out. I don't think a second driveway is necessary. It's not consistent with the guidelines for the district or for the standards for the district. And I do think that there are opportunities to better utilize the space if we're not so constrained by the need to fit on the existing foundation. So with that, I'll end my comments and hope to hear some response from the applicant. Thank you.
Thank you. With the applicant, let me just check with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, are there more people waiting to give comments?
Yes, there are. There's 3 more. So then would you like me to promote them, or would the applicant like to address Mr. Rivers' comments?
Yeah, it's really up to the applicant.
Why don't we, so a lot of the comments have been on the same theme, so perhaps when we hear the public comments, we can try to address as many of them at once as possible.
Okay, the next one is going to be Leighton Newland. We will promote him to panelist.
Leighton goes first.
Okay.
All right, I see him.
Hello?
Hello,
Yes.
we hear you.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Hey, Leighton, Ed Schmear, do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Oh, let me get my, I'm sorry, Ed. I do.
Okay, yeah, I see you.
I want to thank everyone for being on this call today. Let me first say, for full transparency reasons, that Uncle Joe, Joseph Tadlock, and his niece asked me to list this house for him several years ago when I did. Before I listed it, I walked through the house on any number of occasions. So one thing I have a little different than every and anybody else on this call, I think, is that I know this house inside and out. Brother Rivers made a good comment just a few minutes ago when he said that this house was co-joined. This is actually 2 houses that have been co-joined into one house. If you walk through this house and you see it and you understand the dimensions and the interior of this house and the structure of this house, you would not at all be surprised why this application is in the form that it's in. So number one, I want to begin with full transparency that I listed the house and I sold the house. But number two, I want to tell you that Uncle Joe's, one of the key contributing factors to the reason this house was sold to the people it was sold to was because they were going to live in the house. That was key, and it was important to Uncle Joe. And I want people in particular, my friends and my neighbors and my brothers and my sisters on Green Street, to understand that. That was key to Uncle Joe. Number two, 29 Green Street is only one of 2 non-contributing houses on the entirety of Green Street. Now keep in mind, Green Street has at least $1 million house and on the way to having another $2.5 million home on Green Street. The third thing I want to share with you is that the structure and the design that the Bourrets have provided blends in with and adds to the present streetscape of Green Street. If you look at that house and you stand in front of it and you look at the width from left to right, on the house that's to the left of it, there is no room. Where in the world would you put a front door and a porch on what you have on the front of Green Street? Everybody on this call should get off the call tomorrow morning and go on Green Street and look in front of the house and tell me where you'd put a front porch and an entrance. It's impossible. As again, I've walked through the house and I've seen the house. what I think this board should look at is the following questions. Well, what is proposed there, the design, is not only well designed, it respects the history of the neighborhood, and it's going to be well crafted. And is it going to make the neighborhood better and the streetscape better than it is right now? Is there anyone on this phone call that's going to tell me, no, it's not? Well, like I said, I've walked through the house. There is nothing to do with that house but to tear the damn house down and to build it from the bottom up. So, you know, FAR and neighborhood character, I'm 68 years old, and anybody on this phone call knows that I fight like hell for the historical character and the integrity of this neighborhood. I live and die for that. But it's about time when we have some people that are going to invest in the neighborhood, but not to rent it, not to give it away, not to have accessory dwellings, but to live here and to be neighbors. Nobody's ever asked this man, and do you know that he went to Hun School? That he has roots here in the neighborhood, and him and his family want to come back here and make the neighborhood better, invest in the neighborhood, invest in the home, make the streetscape and the landscape of Green Street better? Nobody's talking about that. Everybody's talking about FAR, a side entrance, and streetscape and landscape. Are you kidding me? Come on now. We got enough people that come to this neighborhood and eat it up and swallow it up and buy it up and tear it down for their own investment and their own interest. Here we have somebody that's going to come here and wants to live here and be our neighbors. And they got to get a hard time. Stop it. I'm done.
Thank you. Thank you, Leighton. Elizabeth?
Yes. We do have two more people. Shirley was able to get back on, so she's
Okay.
on phone. I'm not sure what her access is, but Shirley, I'm going to be promoting you now.
Okay.
Oh, let's see. I don't know that she can be, I don't think I can do, I don't think so. Let me move to the next person. I'll call her and see what I can do with her. The next person is going to be Tony Marchetta, who will be elevated.
Okay. I see Tony.
Mr. Marchetta, as you're the lawyer, do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth?
Yes, Ed, I do.
Thank you.
My name is Anthony Marchetta, Tony Marchetta. I've been a resident of Princeton for over 30 years. I live about a mile from the site that is being discussed this afternoon. And I am on the board of the Dorothea House, which is a property just within a few hundred feet of the existing project that's being discussed. I am currently serving as the president of the Dorothea House and became aware of this meeting because I received at Dorothea House the information that was sent regarding the project. My background is that I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. And I am originally from New Brunswick. And in full disclosure, I know the Borai family for over 40 years and have done work with them and actually financed projects that they did in New Brunswick when I was the executive director of the New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agencies. But I'm here to speak as an individual regarding this particular project. And I have to fully agree with the panelist, Robert Van Zumbush, in his comment about the zoning being wholly inappropriate for this district. Virtually all the properties exceed probably the coverage ratio and many of the other zoning parameters. It seems to me that it was an artificial zone slapped onto a district that was inconsistent from day one that zoning was put in place. So what we have here is a situation where an existing structure, an old structure that has been significantly modified over its history, is being proposed to be replaced. And comparing the existing property, which I've driven by on many occasions, going to and from Dorothea's house, the character of the existing building and the condition of the existing building is absolutely terrible. And what the applicant is trying to do at this point is to replace it with something that is virtually identical when it comes to its footprint and general layout, but improve it in significant ways. It's improved it by putting gables, which are more characteristic to the neighborhood. They've placed a porch in the front of the property. They put more appropriate windows and shutters on the building to enhance its appearance. And I tend to fully agree with Leighton Newling in his statement about trying to upgrade the community and still be consistent with the general characteristics that exist in that particular neighborhood. I think this structure will be much more consistent with the character of the neighborhood as it was historically, the existing building that's currently there. And that's all I need to say at this point. I think it would be not only a good property, but knowing the Borais, they would be great neighbors in that community.
Thank you. Hey,
You're welcome.
Shirley, I see you.
Yep, because I got on with my iPad. I've been trying to get on with my computer, and I've been on the telephone, so I missed an awful lot. But is it my turn to say something?
Yes, Shirley, but tell the truth, okay?
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You got it.
Almost everything has been said, and I didn't hear what was said previously, but I am 6 generations in Princeton. My family's been here since the late 1860s. I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission, and I asked the Historic Preservation Commission in 2014 if we could work on making this the 20th Historic District. And I did work with the WISE group to do some research on that. So this is a 10th Historic District, thanks to 9 people who sat in my dining room every week for a year and did so. I understand Brother Leighton. There's some things I don't agree with him on, but I do want to say something about what I'm concerned about, because my backyard faces their backyard. And I saw in the report that there were no trees that were going to be torn down. The big tree that was in back of the Tadlock's backyard, I watched it for 3 days, 2 men take that tree down. And I asked them, why is it that part of my gate was also removed? And they said we had to remove it to move the tree. So I'm hoping that when the persons move in, that they would be kind enough to repair my fence. Also, I'm concerned about the garage that's going to be in the back and how close it's going to be to my backyard. And there's supposed to be a generator and 2 air conditioning units. And if that generator is going to present any noise that I can hear from my backyard. So I am close, I'm on 30 Quarry Street. I have a lot that I can say, but most of it has already been said. But I do want to say that when people move in this neighborhood or any neighborhood, they should know the history of where they are moving. So a lot of this can be avoided. People say they want to move in this neighborhood because it's friendly and it has porches. The porches are gone and people don't speak. So I'm hoping that these neighbors are going to be friendly. They're right behind my backyard, and I hope that they will understand some of my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Did you want to respond to that?
If I could, yeah, Ms. Satterfield, I actually, before I think we had a short discussion about the tree at the meeting we had last September. But shortly before the tree was scheduled to come down, the contractor did mention to me that the fence was grown into it. I sent you an email a day or two before, but I guess maybe you never.
I didn't get it.
But without a doubt, we will be.
I wouldn't have made this remark, yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely be replacing the fence in the rear of the yard. And that was part of Max's presentation that you missed. And also we just presented a landscape plan which shows trees replacing it, not in the exact location, but a couple of trees in the back. Do we have that, Max, that we can bring back up to show that the site plan?
Give me 1 second.
Ryan, can you?
I do.
Or afterwards?
Slide from.
I do want to thank everyone for their comments, constructive and positive both.
So, here I brought up the landscaping plan again. I think Jim, our site engineer, went through it, but you can see where some of the plantings in the back are proposed, as well. Maybe Jim, you could chime in on the, I believe compliant, but the AC location and generator, which I think is kind of screened or a good ways away from that property.
Yes,
I do have can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I do have a tree that was replaced by a magnolia tree that we had. And it is covering, so you can't go through. But in the winter, when there's no leaves, I can go right through to your backyard. So that will have to be replaced. And thank you for showing me the blueprints. Yeah, I see them. But I'm sorry I missed so much because I probably would have had more to say, but I just spent so much time trying to get in.
This Zoom stuff is new to everyone, so we're all kind of muddling through. It's good to see so many faces here. I don't know if we would have all fit in the conference room upstairs like we normally would have this. Jim, you want to just real quick talk about the where the AC things are and what you're going to plant? What the backyard will have.
Yeah, well, we proposed 3 shade trees in the rear along the rear property line, as well as some shrubs near the AC units. They may have a shroud around them, a low fence, but they're notched into the building away from the property line and in the open area along that side property line.
And what about the generator?
That's in the same location.
Distance.
On the side of the building. It's not near the rear property line.
Right here at that distance. Yeah.
Have I circled that correct, Jim?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so it's on the side of the home.
It's supposed to be 5 feet.
Where the AC condensers are now.
Right, they're currently in the same location as the existing.
Well, pre-existing doesn't allow.
Yeah,
Understood.
Right.
I can't.
Elizabeth, do we have more people waiting to comment?
Write a chat into that.
Well, yeah.
Let me just see. I think, yes, there is one other person.
Okay.
Kip Cherry.
Okay, let's get everybody on. Everybody
Okay.
gets a chance.
Kip, you're going to be elevated.
Well, I'm turned off, but
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
trying to chat, or it's amazing that you can't even be, everyone can't chat.
It's ridiculous.
Q&A.
Well, that's because they designed it this way.
Okay.
Are
Are you
you-
there? Do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Questions, no.
I just wanted to make a few comments. I was very involved in working with the creation of the neighborhood. And I think we're losing a couple of things that have been mentioned, but then we've moved on, and I think we need to reiterate. One is the orientation of the homes to the street. and the orientation of the porches to the street and the entrance. And I think that's a very important part of this neighborhood. I think that trying to return a building to its most recent massing is not necessarily the way to go. This was 2 houses that were connected. And so they're not really appropriate for the neighborhood. They're the most recent iterations. And they are oriented away from the street, these 2 buildings connected. And I think that we're losing something by not having that connection to the street in creating a new building. Obviously, if it was an existing building and it didn't have a connection, that would be something else. But if we're creating a new building, why not connect it to the street and the street life? So I just wanted to mention that. And I do feel also that when one can meet the setbacks, one should. 3 feet is a lot smaller than 5 when you're in a very crowded neighborhood. And I think that stormwater is a big issue. And I'm not sure that that really has been enunciated properly or demonstrated that it will be controlled. There's a big effort sometimes to discharge stormwater to the neighbors. And I think that it needs to be demonstrated that the stormwater will not be discharged to the neighbors, but will remain on the property and controlled. I think that those are the main things I wanted to say, but I'm very concerned about the massing of this new structure. And I don't think the fact that the previous iteration was a massive building that didn't conform is necessarily a good precedent for a new structure doing the same thing. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. I think that is all the public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, there was a comment that someone wrote in, but I did ask if they wanted to present it themselves. Is it appropriate for us to read them, Ed, or is it up to them to present it?
Elizabeth, they have to participate. You can't ask questions to a letter, so the answer is no. We should not read that in.
Thank you. And so, Madam Chair, there are no other hands up or any comments.
Okay, so I think we'll close the public comment and go back to the commission. We have 2 issues. One is the proposed demolition of the structure, and the other is the design of the new structure and the proposed use of the existing foundation. I do have a question for Elizabeth. Was the existing foundation something that you and the applicant talked about before the hearing here?
I believe that I had talked to the architect, Max Hayden, when the application first came in. You know, I had asked, was there anything able to be preserved? And I think that was one of the questions under the applicant's questions to justify the request for demolishing the existing house, and support for removing the house should be presented to the commission the opportunity to preserve any part of the house. I mean, I know that they talked about the foundation, and I apologize because I did miss part of the presentation as well, because I was trying to help some of the public and Shirley get back on the Zoom. So I didn't hear if that was addressed, so I apologize. So
Okay,
there was a little
thanks.
bit of conversation at the beginning to say, you know, is there an opportunity? You know, is there any support document that's going to state that you're not able to support, you know, to retain the existing structure, whether it be, you know, one section, the front part or not. But again, I don't know if that was addressed or not.
Okay, well, maybe I can ask Max if he could go over that again, of the thinking behind reusing the front foundation and how that worked in your design.
Well, sure, I'd be happy to. You know, part of it was we were really trying to understand what the house looked like earlier. And when I saw the Sanborn map, I really
Yeah, thank
knew
you.
that the front of the house was original, and that there may have been a porch on the front of it at one point. And when I looked around the neighborhood, the house across the street, the yellowish tan one with the brown trim, sits very close to the street and also seemed to be the same size as the front foundation, and the house next to Yana Moore's house also seemed very similar. So that's kind of where we took our cue from. I did meet, I believe, with Derek and Elizabeth, Derek Bridger, the zoning officer, and Elizabeth Kim at the same point, and told them what we were thinking of doing, that there's so little fabric that's original to the house, and to really make it a more livable house today would be really heroic steps to try to work with it. But we didn't want to really change it too much either. Everybody was kind of used to it in the neighborhood, and we really thought we were trying to be sensitive with the front of the house. So that's how we came up with the design.
How wide
Okay.
is the house,
But I
Max?
think, Max,
How wide is the
you bring
facade?
Max, you bring up a good point, because it could be, you could keep that structure there and it would look pretty much the same, and you would use that square footage. Just you'd be stuck with the existing massing, or what we're proposing as a somewhat what we feel is a better massing alternative.
Yeah.
Elric?
Yeah, I had several thoughts on that. How deep is the porch?
That's a good question. I believe it's about 4 feet deep, 4 to 5 feet deep.
I mean, even the difference between 4 and 5 is a significant difference as if you ever want to sit on the porch. I guess my thinking would be,
I believe it's 6 feet. 6 feet.
that's better. That's good. You have 2 French doors at the moment?
There's 3 front doors at that side, at the
3
front.
French doors. Is it possible to just have a doorway and 2 windows? If nothing else, if there was a sign, even an arrow pointing back to the main entrance, there are plenty of people who don't use their front doors. But the notion of, I just noticed in the illustration that I think people are standing on the porch, and I thought maybe that's because there's not enough room to sit. So those are my thoughts on that. And the other thing was that in this middle section of the building, when you looked up in the cellar, when you were saying 18th century and meant 19th, those floor joists and some of the floorboards looked like they might be salvageable. And if you were to try and use them in that front section, then it would be more of a nod to its past.
We could certainly expose some beams inside, or use the lumber somehow. I mean, of all the lumber that's in the house, that is the only lumber that looks somewhat interesting. Everything else is 20th century framing.
That was my thought too.
Yeah.
All right. Are there other questions for the applicant? Are there, let's see, comments about the design?
I have a question. This is Tony Marquetta.
Oh, okay. We did actually close the public comment.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry.
Okay.
So then we have to think about how we're going to move forward. First, there's a question of whether or not you agree that the demolition is warranted. So would anyone, I mean, I think they've, pretty much convinced me, but are there other people who have any doubts about that?
I don't have any doubts. I think that it's, given that it's non-contributing, and there's not a lot of original fabric. I think that it's okay, but I just want to go back to the question of if there's some of the framing. I mean, the first floor joists are all relatively new. But is it possible that there are other parts of the framing? Now, you said 19th century framing in the middle section from the house that was moved, but I mean, there hasn't been, you know, wall finishes haven't been taken off. And I mean, the house hasn't been thoroughly examined in terms of its framing yet. And I would suggest that that might be part of the demolition plan. And a demolition plan is actually part of the ordinance, is that there be some kind of like a forensic disassembly just to see if there's anything else of that, you know, 19th century construction that is worthy of salvaging and reusing or displaying in the architecture of the house. So you haven't gone through, Max, and done probes and looked at every part of the structure yet, have you?
Celia, the only thing that's visible is the basement ceiling where you see that larger framing.
Right.
You know, everything else has been covered over. And,
So,
you know, I mean, you know, we're open, I think, to, you know, doing some selective demolition. And I'm not trying to be a naysayer, just given how extensive the renovation was and how every single thing was replaced inside. I mean, there's nothing. There's not one piece. You know, every now and then you might see an odd piece of trim, one window, you know, trimmed out in an old piece of baseboard or something. There's not a lick of anything inside. So, you know, start taking the aluminum siding off. Sam was told that it was part of the house was stucco at one point. You know, and of course that was probably stucco over clapboard. Did they bother to put up building paper, or did they put it right on the siding, you know, with wire lath? Because I've seen both. So I mean, we could use some of the lumber on the interior, you know, more in a decorative manner. Yeah, you know, we
and
could try
also
to
just to document, just to, you know, to photograph it, or give a member of the commission an opportunity to come and take a look if there's anything significant or
yeah, I think on the outside we may.
It would be an approach rather than, I guess that would mean rather than just, you know, obviously you're going to have to do asbestos and all of that, but rather than just bulldozing it, taking a more of a gentle demo.
Can I jump
Well,
in?
the good news is I don't believe there is any asbestos because all the renovations were done in the 70s and 80s. And truly, it was such a major gut then that, you know, any of asbestos has long left the building.
Oh, that's good. Excellent.
Yeah. But, you know, when we take the siding off, I think we can do some forensic stuff. And, you know, maybe there is clapboard underneath the aluminum siding, which is underneath the stucco.
Can I jump in? I mean, we are in the business of disassembling old buildings, and we've probably moved about 10 houses at this point. What we look for are buildings where a great deal of the structure is actually exposed, and that a building of this period would have covered up the structure almost entirely, except for floorboards and floor joists, mostly seen in the attic and the floors and under the first floor in the cellar, in addition to the foundation. I do think the notion of doing some probing so you understand a little more about the buildings, since it's collective, would be useful. Beyond that, probably, and you're talking about clapboard, all the exterior things, it's good to get a notion of them, but basically very few of those elements are likely to date back because they will have been exposed to the weather and replaced more readily than the interior.
Well, and I really think the front section was wholly replaced. I mean, the foundation was kept, but the first floor framing is all new framing, which I was really kind of surprised. And, you know, it's just, yeah.
even a verbal description with some photographs, I think would be a useful companion to the house that replaces that earlier version.
Yeah, happy to do something like that.
The demolition should be documented. Now, which would be easier? Would doing probes or just sort of gradually peeling back, you know, taking off the siding and looking at it?
About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when they tore down the clinic, the vet clinic, the old SAVE headquarters up on Herrontown, I got a chance to go in and measure the building beforehand, and I was there the day of the demolition. There were all sorts of things that were revealed that day, but it all happened very fast. It was down in a day. There was evidence of a beehive oven. There was evidence of a foundation for a fireplace that no one knew was there, but it was too fast. You have to do that at a more measured pace. And you can't get all the information, just enough to have a better sense of the buildings. That would be my thought.
Yeah. That farmhouse was really a lovely house.
Oh.
And that was a loss because that was early. That was really early in my mind.
One other thing that was a question from the public was about that front entrance. Is there any way of addressing that?
Sam?
I think definitely creating, right now there's no steps to that porch. I think we need to take a look at that and having steps to it. I just, again, the confusion with a front door versus the porch. I mean, it's still going to be a very, you know, something that's often used in the house, you know, having a nice front porch, which will have enough room for seating. You know, with doors that are exposed to the interior still, but, you know, to not confuse it with the front door. And on the demolition, I mean, you know, just to, there are definitely a couple of things there that Max identified on the back portion of the house where there were some 4x10s. And one of the design features that Max incorporated onto the interior are those 4x10. So if those could be reused for that, definitely we would try to do that. But the idea of a controlled demolition, it's something we'd be open to, but it will create a lot more, you know, dust and debris and construction time on the street.
I agree.
Maybe, you know, I can do a little bit on the side that had the 19th century piece. You know, I think we could do that selectively and not make a big mess.
I like the idea of trying to, you know, we can probe around a little bit before the actual demolition, but to slow the demolition down could be, it'll just create a lot more dust and debris.
All right. So is there a consensus that Robert? Yeah.
I just wanted to say something. Is the intent of this porch, I mean, it had been described by people in the neighborhood that people use the porch to sit on and so on. I don't know to what extent that occurs, but I have to accept that that's what neighbors have said. Is it the intent of the owners to use that porch to sit on? Or is it just to relate to the other porches as a visual element?
It will be used. It will be.
And if it is going to be used, one of the ways in which it works in neighborhoods where porches are used is that people in the neighborhood then come up to the porch. And in that sense, maybe having steps would be a good thing, even though they're not the main, it's not the main entrance. So that if your neighbors came around and came up to the porch, they don't have to go around and you have to let them in to sit on the porch or to chat or something like that. So that might be something to think about. I'm not going to say that that's something that should be done or shouldn't be done, but maybe it's something you want to give some consideration to. If you're thinking about using it in that way.
Yeah, I think we will add steps to the side of the porch.
All right. Are there, I know there were, yes, Roger?
Yeah, no, I just wanted, before we go further, we're writing a report to the zoning board. Can you clarify our specific reporting duties here?
Yeah, Roger, yes, this is a review where you were going to send a report to the zoning board with your recommendations on the historic issues related to the application. There were a lot of questions that came up about drainage and parking trucks and all of that stuff. That will be addressed in detail before the zoning board of adjustment. Your job today is to, number one, say whether or not you support demolition, and number two, whether or not you support the construction of the new structure as proposed, or if so, with certain conditions that you would think the board should consider imposing at the zoning board on the applicant.
Thanks, Ed.
All right. So I think that yes, David.
Could we go back? It's been such a long meeting. The footprint issue, the footprint is going to restrict or dictate certain things, but we're talking about letting the building be torn down. I think that kind of takes away the connection to the footprint. So if the building needed to be, to fit things better, if its foundation and such needs to be moved to be more compliant, we're letting them tear the building down. I don't understand why the footprint then holds us back.
Well, we were talking about retaining part of the front building that's existing that they would continue to use. But so, sorry, you're on mute.
Is that really wall that's going to be visible, or is that just something subterranean at this point? Almost esoteric.
Oh, it will be visible from the side. If you the more current rendering shows a triangle, a pie piece of that foundation that will be exposed.
Thank you.
Say something. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Shirley, you're part of the public tonight, so that part has been closed, I'm afraid.
All right. So anyway, so two things. I guess a show of hands of how many support the demolition. So I support it. It looks like everybody is supporting the demolition. So that part we can put into the memo. And then
only if part of it, if it includes some documentation and the attempt to explore and document any 19th century or earlier structural members in the building before they're removed, and perhaps retaining them for a future incorporation in the building, the new house. And I don't know, I'm sure it can be done in a way that is not going to create a nuisance to the neighbors. So please, no extra dust that's going to be a nuisance, but I think it can be handled in a way that's sensitive to the neighbors and responds to our concern about, documenting a non-conforming but older house in that district. So I think having some documentation as part of the demolition is part of that.
The greatest part of that investigation would be from the inside. So
okay. Perfect.
All right. So Ed, I think you've got that part.
We got
And
it.
then so the second part is the design. And so is there support for the design with additional requirements? Like we've talked about the stairs leading up to the front porch or deck or whatever. Are there other comments that support the design or any other suggestions?
There was a comment made about the two driveways, and that was in fact in the zoning board, the report by the staff to the zoning board and this commission, that it no longer being a two-family home, two separate driveways were not required. So I would agree with that. I would support retaining the primary driveway, but losing the second one.
With you.
I wonder why that would be a recommendation. I mean, it seems like it's already a very crowded street with a lot of residents trying to park on the street. Wouldn't it be a positive bringing cars off of?
As I recall in the report, they noted how long that driveway is, the driveway that leads to the garage, that there's a lot of length on that driveway for parking cars, for visitors and car parking. And just what you said, the density and the also the increasing the pervious coverage by removing that second driveway, you're upping your pervious exposure, grass instead of gravel or asphalt. So I do think, and then with that driveway, then when that's removed, that provides a spot where somebody can park on the street.
I know one of the other ideas that was presented in Elizabeth's report was potentially creating tire tracks for the driveways to also reduce impervious coverage. I think, that's something we would definitely do.
Yeah, I mean, my observation is I would support what the zoning staff in their report, but other members of the commission may have other points that they'd like to make about the driveway. This is just one member's point of view.
Two.
Okay.
All right. Are there other comments about either the site plan or the driveway? Any other suggestions?
Julie, the handrails get painted white.
Yes, thank you, Ed. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that would be a good choice. Less suburban. Are there other suggestions for the design, or is that pretty much it?
Madam
we're going
Chair,
on, we're going on 7 o'clock, so I want to kind of try to wrap this up. Yes.
I just have a question. It might have been talked about, but I'm just bringing it up in case it hasn't. The breezeway, was that something that the commission supported or didn't support? It wasn't talked about.
Right.
Fine.
Although it's not really in keeping with the character, it sets back so far from the street that I don't think that it's going to be particularly objectionable and noticeable.
I'm just wondering about, sorry, Elric, go ahead.
No, I was saying it's more of a landscape element at this point, whatever's planted on that trellis.
I'm a little unclear about the extent of the screening of the two air handling units and the generator on the side of the house. They're not terribly, there's a little bit of a jog back at that point, but Is there some shrubbery being planned to screen those from the view, or didn't really see anything in the plan?
It does not show on the current landscape plan, but definitely something
So
that we do. And I see that there's a comment also from 31 Green from Andrea about those units. So definitely some kind of screening or closing them in somehow.
Okay, so that would be good. We'd probably would just want a little bit of detail on that. Probably just do it with some shrubs or.
We didn't really have a landscape plan in the packet.
No.
But what was shown on the screen did seem rather sparing about landscaping around the units and the compressor. I think a better job could be done with that too.
I know that you have advocated on other projects putting the driveway right up against the building and then putting the landscaping away from the building so it can be observed.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that some of the foundation plantings would be you should consider shifting them out closer to the Rivers property next door.
I think that would be a good idea.
We're happy to work with you administratively on that if you want, or subcommittee.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So augmenting the landscape plan in several areas. Are there other comments, or do you think
I have a comment,
Yes.
and I'm sorry, but I don't know if anybody else had. I was a little bit. I wasn't sure if, I don't know what you call it, but like the closed gable, the white painted trim that kind of enclosed the gables on the sides. I think that's not really in keeping with the other houses in the district. Do other members know what I'm referring to? It just seemed maybe a little too New England, or not really something that's, the white trim, the horizontal band that kind of encloses that gable. We're just within this district. I don't think I see that much of that.
Thank you for pulling it up.
I would agree with that.
I would agree with that too. I think that it would look better without the horizontal bands.
Yeah.
Well, or I don't know if better. I think it looks quite nice, but I think it would be more compatible with the other, vernacular homes in the district. So
It was just incorporated in to break up the, that large massing of those barn-shaped sides, but maybe we can thin them out or reduce them slightly. It could even be the same.
Just painting them the same color is the siding, so that they're not. I agree with Celia that is not in character.
is it it's so much wider than most of the other houses, or I mean
just that horizontal band seems inappropriate.
All right, well, I think we have enough consensus to say to paint that band the same color as the siding.
Why even have a band
Why even
there?
have it? But I mean,
Why even have it?
Or, I mean, there's no structural reason for it, is there?
No.
So are there other changes, recommendations to the design before we wrap this up? Okay.
I do think that the landscaping should come back for review at some point in some way, because we really have not had an opportunity to see a really good landscape plan.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
Got it.
Okay.
And just to confirm, the front porch is going to function as a front porch with an entrance to the house. Is that what was agreed to?
No, no.
It will have French doors, but the main entrance will still be on the side, but we'll have a stair going up to the porch so that neighbors can come up and sit on the porch without having to go through the house.
Okay, I just couldn't remember it.
Right. I think we're pretty good, Ed. I think we have our list. And do we need to vote, or are we good with the suggestions so far?
I think we should vote.
Yeah, and I just want to make one more comment, which isn't an objection or a change, but to comment on the positioning of the garage, which I did note it's about 14'7" back from the rear property line, and I don't think that's terrible. I think that's pretty far away from the rear property line, and with the fence, and again maybe some plantings back there to screen the view to the neighbor on the other side would be a good thing to have. So we should see something pertaining to screening the view of the back side of the garage to the house adjoining the rear.
Right, and then again, the landscape would come back for review. We're recommending it would come back for review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would that be a committee or the whole board? Apologies.
So would someone like to make a motion to,
I think it could be a subcommittee for the landscape review.
Sure.
I'll make the
Madam
motion.
Chair, can I just list the items and someone could make the recommendation just so we get it clear on what those items are?
Yes.
You ready?
So,
All right, number 1, no 2 driveways. You don't like the one on the left side. 2, the porch steps are going to be installed to make it function as a porch. 3, the handrail's not going to be painted white. D, we're going to comply with all the ordinance requirements that HPC must comply with anyway. The breezeway is okay. We're going to do work screening the air conditioning and the generator and buffer the noise. Landscaping should come back for a review by a subcommittee, including screening in the backyard. The white trim elements, the horizontal band shall be eliminated. If the band remains, it should be painted into the same color as the house.
You could be a lawyer.
That sounds good. Is there a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay. Is there a second? David seconds. Okay. Is Daniel, do you want to take?
One
Yes.
question though, does that address when you said that it will comply with the ordinance? Is that historic preservation? Is that addressing the demolition?
Now that would involve, obviously, the requirements for the demolition we will put above with the demolition approval.
Okay, and that there'll be a documentation of the structure.
Right, documentation, probing, see what we could save with boards in the front, stuff in the back, and so on. I have that down.
Great.
Okay. So there was a motion by Elric and seconded by David. Daniel, do you want to do the roll?
Julie Capizzoli,
Yes.
Elric Endersby,
Yes.
Roger Shatskin,
Abstain.
Brandon Campbell, Celia Tazlar,
Yes.
Robert Vonsenbush,
Yes.
Tom White,
Yes.
David Shore.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for a thorough discussion, and thank you all for participating.
Julie, we need to appoint a subcommittee for the landscaping.
Right. Okay, Celia, do you want to be on the subcommittee?
Sure.
Okay. Elric, you want to be on the subcommittee?
I think this is a pretty short-lived subcommittee, so I'll say yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go on.
Let's see, Robert?
I'm on enough as it is, so.
Oh, okay, fine. How about David?
No, thanks.
No? All right, I'll be on the subcommittee. All right, I'll do it.
Julie.
Okay.
I feel
The other thing is that I think probably taking a look on the actual site might be helpful. And I'm not going anywhere, so that's
Okay.
another problem.
All right. All right, so thank you all for coming.
Thank you. I would like to bring up something else, though, and that is the fact that Shirley could not get back on again, because if we'd had another application from which she did not have to recuse herself, if we'd had another application, she certainly should have been able to have participated. There should be some mechanism of allowing a member to come back on. Aside from
I think
public
she could
comment.
come back on now.
She's not on anymore. I think that when she's not on the meeting now.
But it was a major problem.
It was a major, and it was also a major problem when we couldn't get Yaina back on too.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
both of them were struggling to get back on, and you know.
And if somebody is going to make public comment on two different applications, you know, that's a problem. I think some means of solving that should be looked into.
Can
I want to.
Audio that's turned off in between, and then you turn the audio back on when the public comment is expected.
I'm sorry, what was that, Elric?
Is it possible so that the public doesn't have an opportunity to get into the commission's?
Bye. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So could you say that again, Elric?
I just wondered whether or not, if you finished making public comments on the first proposal, is it possible at that point to turn off the audio and then you know, turn the audio back on when it's time for comments on the next one? So
It could, but typically we will put them back into the public pool. But because we had so many problems, you'll see that all the people who had talked, we didn't do that because we didn't want to have a problem losing them. So there was just a glitch tonight about it. We haven't had a problem in the past, but we did have a problem tonight. So we didn't want that to occur because we wanted the public who was speaking to be able to hear the comments back to respond to comments that they had made or other comments in reference to the application.
we owe you a vote of thanks, Elizabeth, because you really handled that very well with all the many persons who wanted to speak up to this. And I also thank the applicants for being so receptive. I appreciate
Ed Schmier joining.
Okay.
Hey, Jim.
Okay. All right.
And
So
I
I think,
apologize. I apologize, but I need to follow Ed out the door, so I'll see you
I
next
know, I
time.
need to leave too.
I move adjournment.
Isn't there any
Okay.
public comment? Public comment?
Oh, yeah, there is.
I'll be quick, but the timing is important. The council is considering an ordinance to change the accessory ownership situation. So right now, if you have a accessory unit on your property, you have to own that unit, and therefore you have control over what's going on in that unit. And now the idea is that it could be sold to somebody else. And I think this is a real challenge for historic districts, as well as other neighborhoods too, but particularly historic districts. And I think you all should be aware of it and you should weigh in on it because the council is going to make a decision next week.
Okay, David, David Cohen, do you have a copy of that we could look at?
Sure. I mean, it's on the meeting agenda from the last meeting because it's an ordinance change. It was introduced a week ago, and then the hearing will be this coming meeting.
So anybody who wants to take a look at it, I can help you find it on the website, Elizabeth, if you need help.
Okay, we just weren't aware of it, so, but I think it is important for the HBC to at least
Isn't
understand.
that like related to that application that we had for the development of Lee Avenue for the flat? Turning
It
that
is related to that, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
I
then
see.
there's state case law that makes that important, that you have to now offer that. You can't require owner
So they
occupied.
claim, so they claim.
Yeah,
All right,
they-
well, think,
David,
I'm
did
happy
they
to talk
settle on
about
that?
this offline with anybody who wants to hear more about it, but I think we need to adjourn the meeting.
I agree.
all right, thank you. Thank you, Kip, for pointing that out. All
I'll
right,
look it up.
is there a
Okay.
motion to adjourn?
I had moved, yes.
Oh, okay, a second?
I'll second.
Yes.
Brenna, second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, everyone. Thank
Have a
you.
good night. Thank you.
All right, good night.
Good night.